and I've got Rae again with me, and we're bringing in Miss Ott, Mama Tiff.
I was going to say, did you forget my name?
Who are you again? I don't know. We've done a lot of talking today between Slack and the Google Doc comments and conversation. I don't know. I try to forget you sometimes. No. Coming off of what I thought was a pretty awesome master chat. Not that we have any like non-awesome ones anymore, but really cool one. I thought some really interesting takes on things. We were talking about healthy grading practices and really just grading in general. A lot of, what should be there, what shouldn't be there, what's wrong with it, and how do we fix it. A lot of really cool stuff. How are you feeling right now, Tiff? Like after the chat, what's on your mind really quick?
This was such a cool chat. I'm going to say it. I always say it. It was awesome. I love chats. I'm so happy. I mean, you know me. I like every single post chat video we do. I'm super stoked. But this was neat because, a lot of times our chats are very like feel good, right? Like we got this, hurrah. And I liked this one because it was so practical. I mean, it still had those moments like the rally and cry moments, but grading is something that we all have to deal with. Every teacher, almost every teacher. And if we don't have to actually assign grades, we have to give feedback and we have to do this. And somebody said something about how you don't really learn that when you're an education major. And I mean, I learned how to make rubrics and I learned that, but I never really learned how to actually set up a grade book and how it works best. And so, this conversation got into some of that. And I also loved that it was very much like, yeah, the way we grade kind of sucks. So let's fix it.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. That was sort of the thing. So I want to bring in Tiff. Rae, do you have anything like right off the top of your head? Or I screenshotted a whole bunch of tweets, so we're going to go through some of those unless you have something to start with.
I just loved Tiff's focus on the fact that teachers aren't taught how to grade. That was one of my biggest frustrations entering into the classroom, was trying to be a good math teacher and take off like half points for things.
Yes.
Like, where was the rationale that because you didn't circle your answer, I take off half a point? Or like, because you didn't add right in the first part of your equation, the whole thing's wrong? Or like, where did that come from? And that was my first frustration with grading right off the bat. So I just can't wait to dive into this further throughout our.
So how did speaking of that, like, so what was it that taught you that you were supposed to take a percentage off for that or something like that? Right? Like, where was that you learned? Was that in school when you learned, or like after you got to your first district, or what was it?
Well, Jeff, it's how we've always done things, right?
Yeah,
I know. I know that, but I'm at like, so is that how you learned about grading when you were in college and getting your degree? Like that's
No, I don't think I learned about grading. I think that my first experience grading was I gave my first formative or summative assessment. I looked at it and I'm like, oh, I guess I have to for this. And how did my teachers do it? And how horrible is if you're graduating from college and you're thinking, how did I do this 12 years ago? Like, come on, we gotta do better than that.
So why now I'm interested in that. Like, why is it that you think that they aren't teaching that at all in school?
That's a good question.
Now, my first thought is, well, maybe it's because it's so different in so many across every district, but so is everything else that they're teaching.
Yeah,
too.
That's why that argument doesn't hold any water.
That's a weird thing. So
I think it has a lot to do with the fact that grading seems to be, at least in my experience in education, the topic nobody touches. And so I think that goes across districts PD. I think that goes across teachers' experience in college. I think that goes really, we talked about in the beginning when we were doing our pre-chat, we were discussing how it's really the only thing that at least hasn't been discussed recently. We're still doing it the same way as our parents did. And so while colleges aren't teaching it, I think it's really a universal problem. People are not talking about grading until recently.
Well, I'll tell you when we travel around and work with teachers and stuff, like when we get to grade and it's like, oh, don't touch my grade book.
Yes.
And like, I get it because that's probably like it's had so much weight put on it. Like as a teacher, you're evaluated so much based on the grade you're putting out and what you're doing, and by teachers, by parents, by administration. So I get it, but I feel like that could actually be the reason why it's not talked about, because everyone's like, I'm not going near grading because they're going to freak out on me. Maybe that's why they pulled it out of college courses and they're like, it's not worth it. Not worth the money. Cancel the grading class. It's not worth it anymore. Real quick, I want to say hi, Susan. Hi, Jackie. Hi, Jeff. Thanks for coming in. Real quick. Sorry, go ahead, Rae.
Well, I was going to say, it's just comical. I think even with standard-based grading that's now been discussed and implemented for years, they still are hesitant about that because they're still doing research to then support that. Right? They have research to support elements, but not when they're put all together fully, at least not long studies. So, yeah, it's interesting that this is kind of the, secret topic no one's discussing, which is why I was so glad that we talked about it today.
So let's give a shout out right now there to Joy Kirr for doing this.
Joy's
phenomenal
awesome.
Chat. Great. She's just awesome in general. She is the author of Shift This, the book. The hashtag is up there right now too. That's her hashtag. She does a chat on that as well. Mm-hmm. Great book. She's just fantastic.
She has so many things she's really good at too. She's really good. She's got this whole Shift This thing where, what little steps can you take to make those important changes? And then she's got, she does a ton of Genius Hour stuff.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. Yeah. And she does all this grading stuff. She's just a very well-rounded, she's got her hands in everything. I really like her.
Jeff says his college taught grading, but when he got to teaching, it was all different. which is similar to a lot of times you go to college, you get a degree, and you get to a job, and it's not what you learn.
And they hand you a textbook and say, now teach this.
Yeah, exactly.
Really, though, there should be a specific course in college on how to give feedback, because that's really what today's chat was about. It was about grading. It had that title, but really it was about building learners and giving them authentic feedback so they can continue to learn. Yeah. And so that would be an interesting topic for universities if they're doing it already. Maybe we've all forgotten, I guess, but really focusing on feedback, right? Because that's what our students need. That's what you give regardless of the grade.
Yes.
Absolutely. We saw a lot of that tonight. A lot of people talking about how they give the grade, but then they provide as much feedback as they can. They have additional conversations around the grade and stuff like that, is constantly providing that feedback and that additional information. I want to touch on one of Joy's answers is one of the first ones that I screenshotted, was the second question, which was about what myths that people have. We touched on in the Facebook live before the chat. And she said it's a myth that we need, all capitals, grades. Consider kids who are homeschooled, for one. And it's also a myth that grades actually represent what a child knows.
Yeah.
I think that's a big one. Someone else commented that it was something about I think he said his son or his daughter or something, getting a grade, but he wasn't sure, or he wasn't confident that though she got an A, she actually knew knew the content to an A standard. She was just good at school. I talk a lot about how I was good at school. I got A's and B's all through school. I was good at it, but I don't know if I actually understood the content at a quote unquote A level. So and then like you said, homeschooled children don't necessarily get a letter grade. I don't know how that works necessarily, but what are your go ahead and share your thoughts on her comment there and kind of what that brings out of you?
Well, to touch on homeschool, I know homeschoolings can do it 100 different ways, but I do like her point about that grades don't necessarily need to exist. I couldn't agree more with that. I think grades have some accountability for educators to really provide that feedback. But I agree with her. I don't know that grades are necessary, because grades really seem to create more issue than I would like, to be honest with you.
Well, and as soon as you start saying that, because I've had this conversation with many people on Twitter, in real life, whatever, I am very fortunate to be in a job right now that I don't grade. And I really like that. I provide oodles of feedback, but so often I hear things like, well, what are colleges going to say? Colleges give a grade and colleges use grades. And that argument of, well, I need to prepare them for the next step, so I'm going to use bad practices now, it just drives me crazy.
That's Chad's favorite thing. He said, bad teaching later is not a reason for bad teaching now.
Yes.
I want to get both of you, one of you, comment. Jeff had a comment there that says that his county tells us which or that they can't put anything below a 50 in the grade book. And then they ask the question, how does this actually show what a student knows or can do? And I wonder where either of you would go that based on Chad's, when Chad talks about grade. Yes, Rae, go ahead.
I love this.
Whoa, okay.
Jeff, I'm not sure on your thoughts on this, but I completely agree. Nothing less than a 50% in the grade book. Now, that is completely from the standard-based grading mindset, where you are going to dig a hole so deep for your kid that regardless of their mastery later on throughout the year, they can't dig themselves out. So by eliminating having 50% still being the low point for their score, they're still failing. A 50% is still as much failing as a 20% is. They're not doing well. They haven't met mastery. But it allows them to be able to grow from that experience in terms of their grade later on. Now, I hate percentage grade books. That has a whole separate issue. But as teachers begin to transition from percentage-based to a more standard-based mindset or grade book, that is the first recommendation that I give teachers, is not to go below 50%.
Chad always likes to talk about Rick Wormelli's pit. He says when a kid gets a 0 or something that low, you're almost essentially throwing them in a pit and then saying, okay, come on, climb out. And they can't get back up, because if they get a 0, I mean, that's mathematically, it's most likely they're never going to be able to get there, even if they master the content, unless you have a ridiculously weighted final or something like that, but not likely.
Well, and you need to give your students the same opportunities to succeed as fail. Using the percentage base is 50% failing. They have more opportunity to fail with that scale. You have to be setting the bar for them to either not do well or continue to develop in their understanding. You can't keep putting them in that rut.
Okay, well, Tiffany?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. I think, too, this speaks to a much larger issue. And so we're kind of living in this world where we have what we believe is best for students. Well, okay, I and Rae and Jeff, like this little cohort of people, we believe there's certain things that are best for students, right? Standards-based grading and focusing on mastery and allowing multiple opportunities to show understanding. But then we're also living in this kind of real world where we have administrators and everybody telling us, okay, you have to have a grade book and you have to have this and you have to have this. Mm-hmm. And so we're all kind of in this place where we're trying to sort it out and figure out, like, okay, how do we meld the idealism with the reality of what we are being forced to do?
Yeah.
So on one hand, I'm like, well, grades are dumb. Just ignore all grades and get rid of percentages, because I hate percentages with like a fiery passion.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I understand a little bit some of the arguments that, well, if they're going to get a 50% for doing nothing, they're going to do nothing, okay? But then I'm going to come back against that and be like, okay, if your kids aren't going to do anything in your class, you're not engaging them enough. You know what I mean? Like, if your class is, I don't know. I just always think that the responsibility should be on us.
If they're not doing anything and they're getting a 50, they're still failing. So, like,
yes,
right.
They're going to get an F on the report card at that point. Like, so that the parent, like, I mean, they're getting an F. Like, so, but I would like to, Jeff, if you're still with us, I'd like to just know if that helped answer, or if it just
infuriated
or not. Yeah, just be curious.
If he left us,
I'd just be really curious to know, like, how, like, what he thinks of that, because maybe he hadn't thought of it that way. Maybe he had disagrees. Love to get his thoughts and stuff. So if you're with us, Jeff, that'd be awesome to either on here or reach out to us individually or something. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I love Tiff. You made a good point there. If they're getting consistently those low grades, it doesn't matter what low grade it is. We're not doing something as educators to support them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not a classroom issue. Maybe they need help outside of the classroom. But
resources,
either engagement or the intervention that they need. They need something. Retakes came up a lot in our Twitter chat.
Mm-hmm.
So that 50%, whether it be a 50, a 40, a 10, or a 0, we need to be building our students up from that fail point, not bringing them farther down into it. So I love how you said that.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
And I think also, one thing that came up in a lot of the conversations too, I had a really long conversation with some people about how to move towards standards-based grading when you are not in a district that has that model. Because I know that there's a lot of teachers who are interested in it, but it's like, oh, my district doesn't do that. Whatever. And so I had some conversations about, in your grade book, setting the assignments as the standards or the substandards, right? So the student can recognize a fraction. The student can recognize an equivalent fraction. And having that be the assignments, because that moves us away from a task-based system, which is what so many classrooms are. And it's because it's what we've always known. It's what we've kind of been taught how to do. And it moves it towards a, do you know what I'm trying to teach you, right? Yeah. Do you understand it? And if so, boom, you got it in the grade book. Awesome.
Yeah.
If I could press like to your comment, what you just said, times I would.
Go back and rewatch the video and then like it a bunch of times.
Because really though, this task completion versus understanding is the first shift. You know, we talked a lot about that and when we were writing those SBG blogs, that we need to really help our teachers take that first step, even though their district's not. And there are so many strategies. That one, a really good one. There's so many things you can do to shift your mindset. The grade book is arbitrary almost at that point. It has to be a mind shift between the teacher and the students.
Absolutely.
I'm wondering where to find those awesome SBG blogs. There's the website on that screen there. Anyway.
Mallory, hang on. I'm going to interrupt you because Mallory said that's how she sets up her grade book. And that's awesome, Mallory. Kudos to you. That's great.
Oh, there she is. Yeah. Thanks, Mallory. That's awesome.
That's great. I love to see people actually putting that in use.
Yeah, and this is good here that Jeff actually says, great that you all agree on that. That gives me hope. So that's awesome. Jeff. Glad to hear it. Love everyone jumping in right there. Yeah, he said that helped, so that was good. He said, I didn't, sorry, these all popped up. He said, I so get what you're saying, and I love it. I am working on planning a grid method. Ooh, he's working on a grid method. You know, I think Jeff might have posted it either on Twitter or something that he was doing that. So, Jeff, we'll reiterate that we do everywhere else, but if you need any help with that, do not hesitate to reach out. If you're not already in the Facebook group, make sure you get in the group. Just search the grid method on there and find the group, and Amber will get you in there. So let's move on to question 4 was, some teachers have to give grades. How can we keep the focus on learning while still using grades? And I want to touch on Roman, who we love Roman. He said, yes, we must give grades, and we can, but we can do it in a positive way. Have more information available with the grades, have learning artifacts, share a video, share a note that explains exactly what snapshot story it is telling, and know that the grades can and will be changed and or adjusted. Thoughts on that and rolling off of that? Anything?
Well,
I like the answer. Like, I like everything he's saying there, like what we're touching on. So.
Yeah, I felt like his answer was really well structured, especially for a tweet. Holy cow, it's like a crazy Twitter thread. Awesome. But I really like how he focused on the fact that it's a snapshot, right? We can always allow our students to grow their understanding. Therefore, the grade should grow with them. I don't know that I 100% agree that grades are completely necessary, but with all the stuff that he put with his grade, well, then sure, I don't care. Assign a grade to it. I think that feedback element is huge.
Yeah.
And Roman has so much insight to share that I guess I'm glad to know that we agree on how grades are structured.
I think when he says, yes, we must give grades, he's meaning like the system tells us we must, not necessarily saying that he thinks it is. But so that's good.
And he touches on such an important piece, and it's that feedback piece. And it kept coming back again and again in the Twitter chat, that the feedback that we give to our students, you know, traditionally is a grade, right? And there are so many more ways that we can both give and get feedback. Some people were talking about ways to, you know, have those feedback conversations with students. And somebody, I didn't screenshot that one. Somebody said that they find the most powerful opportunities are just when they have a conversation with their students. Yeah, sure. And I couldn't agree more. You know, one thing, you know, I use the grid method, love the grid method. And what I love so much about it is that it frees up so much time so that I can talk to my students. Yes. And when I'm having a conversation with my students, I can learn so much more from where they're looking. Are they looking down? Are they looking over here? Are they looking confidently at me? Is their body language a certain way? And all those nonverbal communication skills, I can just know when they're walking up to me if they understand the content. And that is so valuable.
Yes. And the conversations that can then spur into further conversations toward their understanding. I don't mean to tell a long story at all, but I literally met with 2 students today. One student is usually very high achieving. One student's usually not my high achiever. And my lower achieving student was totally right today. And my higher achieving student had the problem wrong. And so I watched them and me, it was like the 3 of us discussing a formative assessment. And there was this moment where a student looked up and he goes, actually, I'm really confident my answer is right. Here's exactly why I'm correct. And I sat there and I was like, awesome. But those
right? Like, oh.
I literally had my phone was like a little farther away from me, and I was like, can I just grab this and video record this real quick? It was so fun. But that conversation, who cares what the grade is as much as that feedback, that conversation was so valuable for me as the educator, learning about them, for the student that was correct to really have that reassurance, and for my student to learn from another student and have that ability. I was just so cool.
And so I guess the big question that a lot of people are struggling with is, yes, that's what I want, right? I want that feedback kind of situation. I want this really authentic learning experience, but I also have to do X, Y, and Z. And so the more that we can help people marry those two dichotomous worlds, right? And push those two things together, I think that's where we can really help people, and where these kinds of conversations are so powerful, because then people can say, oh, I can, right? It's not that I can't do this because my district has X, Y, or Z. I can, and there is a way. It's like growth mindset.
Look at that. Look at you.
Full circle.
I'm sorry, I'm choking over here. Excuse
we don't
me
need
again. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, right.
I know, right?
Without you sometimes.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I don't even know why I'm here right now. Just to read some tweets, I think. Another answer that Joy. I can't speak either. I'm glad this is live and I can't edit it. That's the best part. Is there's no going back over here. But Joy said in one of her other answers that let students have a say in their grade. What can they prove they've learned? Where do they know they can improve? And don't let an average have control over their final grade. What are your thoughts on that? When she says let students have a say in their grade, what does that mean to you? Go, Rae. Oh, sorry,
no.
Rae can go first. I'm blabbing.
Guys, this topic's like making my heart's beating so fast. I'm so glad we're talking about this. Sorry, Tiff. You can totally answer. For me, I love this. We do this a lot. I use the grid method too in my classroom, but when we have the time to have those conversations, we always end our meeting with, so how do you feel? Where do you feel your understanding level is? And so our understanding levels are grades, but we don't actually even have numbers on our formative assessments. It just says basic understanding, mastery understanding. It has all of our levels on there, and they prove or tell me which understanding level they have. And sometimes we match up and we discuss why we agree, and sometimes we don't agree, and we discuss that too. But giving the students the ability to reflect and have some say in their grade is always nice in that way. And then it also lends itself really well to the say that they have and the ability to take a retake. And I do a lot of retakes in my classroom. And so those two opportunities, those daily 2 opportunities to have some student voice in that whole process is so valuable.
I had when I was in high school, I took a senior art AP class, an AP class for art, right? I was like a big art nerd, and we graded ourselves. And I always think when you have students grade themselves, they are often, so they're in 2 extremes. They're either going to give themselves like all high points no matter what, or they're going to be so hard on themselves. And whichever it ends up being, you've opened up a whole, world of fabulous discussions. If the kid gives them all 4s or whatever your scale is, right there, it's like, okay, you did everything perfectly. Okay, so why don't you read this to me and let's talk about it? Or, I really think that you did that. So I don't know. I just think that kids taking that moment to grade themselves is really powerful for them. And not grade as in like, I got an A, but evaluate themselves,
Sure. Reflecting. It's great. Yeah.
Jeff, in that tweet, there was a last line that I knew I wanted to comment on, but I don't remember what it said. Can you read the end of that that tweet?
Don't let an average have control over the final grade.
Yeah. Average.
So, the word average. Yeah, Tiff, we were both talking about this on Twitter today. I think separately, but I was seeing your tweets fly by. That average is such a big discussion, at least in my district right now, how they calculate a number of different things. And we've debated average versus decaying weight and all of that. So I don't know that we need to get into that, but Tiff, any thoughts?
Averages are meaningless. I mean, an average does not tell you what kids know. And then when you start combining averages of averages, like I've worked in school districts where you have like homework is 10% of your grade and summative assessments are this percent of your grade. And so you average up all the grades there and then you average them again to get this mystical letter. And so in Ohio, we have these, there's a formula for the amount of growth a student should reach on the state tests year by year. Mm-hmm. And it's a very mystical, hidden away formula. And it almost feels like that's what we're doing to our students, right? An average of averages is malarkey. It's dumb.
Malarkey.
Malarkey.
I love it. Not the average.
Getting off my soapbox now.
Yeah, I know. A lot of this, I feel like I'm on a soapbox. I'm like, but it's just my opinion.
So,
don't hate me if you don't agree.
So let me get to another one. So this was a conversation that spurred off of something that Brent Gilson's comment said, and then Joy commented, and then someone else commented in, and then Joy kind of went back and forth with her a little bit. So, Brent said, he doesn't have the letter, so I'm not sure what he was responding to, but he said it should be informative. Students should know what they have a handle on and what they are still striving to develop. I do not think percentages have a path to that clarity, however. So students fixate on a number, not the journey. And Joy said, oh my, this is what grading has done. What do you think should be the purpose, Brent? And then she went on to say, I don't believe percentages either. I'm an all feedback kind of educator. And someone else chimed in and said, as a parent, I wanted to know if my kid was working as expected. I didn't want to push so hard that there was pushback, but I definitely had two slackers, so I found percentages helpful. Joy says, I'll bite. What does an 82% mean? How about in 7th grade ELA? And there's a couple back and forth with her and Brent trying to figure that out. And Joy said it probably depends on the work given students, so and so. Anyway, the next comment was, as a parent, I would figure my kid was working at around average for the class, likely a little below. If not, I would wonder about teachers' grading practices. And Joy came back again, and this is why I love Joy. She says, I'll bite again. Why should your child be compared to others? Imagine the diversity of the children in that class. Why can't they all learn the material? I love that. That was like the biggest fixation on grades and percentages is like the only like true factor for it is who gets to be the valedictorian or not at the end of the year. And in reality of things, like, who cares? Like, is that what we're supposed to be doing in school? Is like, hey, see if you can be the best as far as that letter grade versus are you actually learning and growing at your own pace and learning your own material? So anyway, I just want to get you guys to, based off of that, I thought maybe that would get a little rise out of both of you. I was watching it and just kind of, like.
Who's gonna go first? Because I have about like.
Well, Rae went last time. Ray's still like, she's got like her tongue thing going or whatever there, and her teacher face.
Man,
Tiff, why don't you roll on it?
Okay, there is so much there. I mean, I work with a population of students that has a lot of parents that are very concerned about grades, and
Thank you, Mallory.
I don't even know how to say this. So when this parent is saying that 82% tells her that her kid is doing probably slightly below average compared to the class, and if not, she questions the grading practices. Okay, well, hold on. We need to agree on what 90% is, 80% is. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
At all. There is chronic grade inflation happening around education where kids are just like getting A's for putting their name on a paper, and this understanding that an 82% is below average just kind of like makes my stomach go bleh, because that's crazy.
Well, not to mention that the thought that the kid is working around average for the class. Like, how do you know that's average for the class? If
And
what
who
if they're
cares?
what if the high? Yeah, but even in that like that world of believing it, like what if 82 is the best in the class? Like your kid's doing awesome, and everyone else is just learning it still. You know what I'm saying?
And that's
like,
why grades suck. That's why grades can't tell you anything, because it's totally subjective to everything.
Yeah.
All right, Rae, you've done a good job. Go ahead. You talk now.
I don't actually know. I don't know where to start on this one. We kind of debated this, Jeff, when we were looking at that blog where we were setting the baseline for why we liked SBG, where we had 2 students and we compared their scores and asked what those scores meant. So that would be a blog that I would initially push people to if you wanted to further this conversation. Yeah. For me, I go right back to, I work under an extremely intelligent curriculum director in my district, and she initially was the one that was starting to push standard-based grading in my district. And she said, I went to one classroom and all the kids, there were, 3 grades in the grade book, and we were halfway through the semester. And I went to another classroom and there were 42 grades halfway through the semester. Grades mean nothing, because if there's no baseline for the purpose of grading or what the grade communicates, then it doesn't really matter what the numbers are. So to Jeff's point exactly, we don't know what average is, and if 82 was the highest grade in the class, well, then you wouldn't know that by having an 82%. So,
and I just need to say in response to that, because sometimes what districts do in an effort to solve that problem, and this is not good, so don't do this, is that they then dictate everything. This is for a grade. This is for a grade. You have to have these 10 grades in the grade book at this point in time, and everybody has to be doing, oh my gosh, okay. That is a terrible idea, and I hate it when districts do that. So if you're a district leader, don't do that.
Or maybe you really need to evaluate why you feel the need to have that. Maybe there's a different problem that we need to make sure that we address, because if a solution is just to require specific grades, what's the purpose behind that? That really needs to be.
Well, and what's the problem that you're trying to fix with that solution?
Yep.
And is it actually going to fix it?
Actually going, is it actually fixing that? Or is it just fixing it in the numbers and because you want to make sure you have, I don't know. So I do want to give, like, one of the screenshots that I took was actually one of Jeff's tweets.
Yours? Oh no, Jeff. Got it.
Jeff Kaplan.
It's like, why would you screenshot your own?
Why wouldn't I screenshot my own? Awesome, Tiff.
I just have a caveat. My computer's dying, but I'm trying to log in on my phone to continue this conversation. So I'm not distracted. I'm trying to log in.
Gotcha. You're good. I was doing stuff, like, it's all good. So Jeff says, in my class, grades are a moving target. Students can always shoot for a higher score if they want to or need to.
Yeah.
That's what I love. I love that. Like, they shouldn't be, here's your grade because it's Tuesday the 5th. Like,
and there was a lot of conversation about corrections and retakes, and there was some really good discussion there about it. And I think that something that was really important that came up is a student. Hi, Rae, you're back.
Hey, I'm back.
A student doing a correction on assignment is great, and it should happen, but that doesn't prove their mastery of it. Right? That's where a retake comes in. And one problem I see happening a lot when I work with teachers using the grid method, and they have like the assessment pieces after each, learning opportunity. and then the teachers are like,
come on.
Sorry, my bad. And then I talk to the teachers about why their kids are maybe not, reaching that level of understanding that we want them to be. And the teacher says, oh, well, I had them correct that quiz that they didn't pass. I'm like, yeah, that's a problem. Because correcting is the first step. And then you have to make sure it's in their head.
Yes.
Just correcting an answer doesn't put it in the kid's head. That's when you have to teach them study skills. And you have to teach them how to review their work and practice and blah, 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 blah. You can't just do a correction and say, all right, I'm done. you get full points, or you get half the points back, or whatever.
Right.
I think our next online course is going to be about blah blah blah.
I say that a lot.
Tiffany was teaching her kids that. I want to touch, sort of, kind of fits in with what you're saying there, like Tyler Arnold, who's, I think he's actually moderating next week. Chat, we don't have a topic just yet, but I think he's on next week or soon. His answer to question 6 was keep it real and remind students the real world isn't about points. It's about experiences. Embrace the chance to make yourself better and more marketable. I thought that was good. I love that, because it's not about.
And that's focusing on the value that we're trying to teach our students, right? It's not about getting an A, because getting an A in school doesn't mean you get an A in life, right? It's about those soft skills, being able to push through, be a lifelong learner. Those skills need to be taught in schools just as much as content does. So how can we blend those together? Offering retakes, reflections, all those pieces are getting us in the right direction.
It's not about finishing a worksheet. It's about understanding. I say all the time, I'm a broken record. My students hate it. I say, I don't care that you got it done. I care that you got it. Yeah. So if you have this paper and you don't understand it, no, like that's not going to fly, right? Because in the world, you need to understand what you're doing. You can't just check the boxes and be done.
Right.
So, touching on the soft skills and the real world thing, one of my favorite quotes in the world is that a college degree guarantees you one thing, and that's that you have a college degree. And the fact of the matter is, in most instances, not in all, because there's some specialized, specific things like a teacher's license and things like that, and a doctor and lawyer, where you have to have specific. But in so many fields and industries, when you walk into an interview for a job, you're one of 25, 50, 100, 200, 500 people who have the same exact degree as you.
Yeah.
It got you in the door. And at that point, it's those other skills that, and your ability to adapt on the fly and learn from the situation. And like Tiffany said, actually understand what's going on and project that your competency in that level. That's what gets you into places and gets you the job that you're supposed to get. So I think it's really important you can have a student who can just kill it all the way through college, all the way through high school, all the way through school, do great in college, have great grades and stuff like that. But once they get in the room, if they don't know how to adapt and how to overcome objections or failure or mistakes, or when they get confused, how to overcome that and understand things and just speak to people, like they're not going to get that job. Now, obviously, again, specific jobs, it won't really matter. But in the majority of fields, like that's a big piece. So teaching them and allowing them to have more control, I think is really a really big piece. So I like that.
And to bring it back, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
To bring it back to grades, right? Like this full circle thing. How many employers care that much about the difference between a 3.5 and a 3.7?
None.
GPA. I mean, really? Like,
here's what I'll tell you. What one of the most common misconceptions about a college degree is, outside of those specifics, like areas where you have to have those, most employers want you to at least have a 4-year degree, and the most important part of that is that you committed for 4 years and got through it.
Exactly.
That's why someone will hire you to be a mid-level manager when you have an English degree that has zero to do with business, right? Or you have a business degree and they'll hire you to do something, whatever, like, because they look at you and say, oh, this is someone who was able to commit for 4 years. They got up there with the class, they got through the party and stuff and didn't let it ruin them. They did what they said they were going to do, and we're going to train them on everything they never learned in school anyway, because like it's specific to our job, our business. So that's a big piece of it. That's huge.
So as you guys were scrolling through Twitter, was there a common question that teachers really didn't feel like they had the answer to yet? Did you see any of that consistency?
I think the biggest one I saw was this concern about being pulled in two directions, between like, here's what I think is best practices for providing feedback and assessing my students, and here's what I feel like I'm being told to do. And I just saw that again and again. And it's comments like, but I have to assign a grade, or parents want me to assign a grade, or call it, you know what I mean? That's that pull. And I think that is the biggest grading hurdle that we have to overcome when we're having this conversation.
Yeah. And really that comes down to constraints can only constrain you as much as you allow, right? Like we need to obviously follow what our district requires of us. Their employers, don't get me wrong, but they are only as limiting as you allow them to be. So trying to find middle grounds or solutions that still get the district what they want, but still allow you to give your best to students is really the goal.
Rae and I touched on that yesterday when we were chatting, and Chad actually touched on this all the time when we're doing training. We get to the part of the training that's on graded, because that's a common question is, but I have to do this, like it's what we do. And we've seen so many teachers do a really nice job of saying, okay, well, I'm going to do standards-based grading, and I'm going to do the grade for mastery. And then after I do that, in this book, I've got my other book that I'm going to flip it to however I need to report it to the school.
Yeah.
Right.
And Chad's really good at working with teachers on set. Okay, let's find, if it says this in mastery or in standards-based, what does that mean based on what you have to do based on your policy?
Right.
And that's with Matt, obviously we do a lot of training with mastery and stuff, and the world of education isn't all there to that same point yet. So a lot of what we do is actually working with teachers on, okay, how do we take this new world of mastery learning, or with a teach further lesson and all these things built onto it, and fit it within the world that you have to play within. And
that's where you get to get creative.
Yeah.
Right. It's creative problem solving.
Exactly. I'm lucky, and you know me, I don't say lucky very often.
No, you don't.
I'm lucky to have the two of you and Chad that are really, really good at doing that with teachers and stuff. So, I'll say fortunate. I'm fortunate. I mean, So, the one I did want to comment. One of the screenshots I took was Tiffany's.
Oh.
You were replying to Lauren. Lauren commented, or her answer for question 5 was, students write about topics that matter to them, show appreciation for each other, ask questions out of curiosity, give creative interpretations, and express empathy. The most important stuff isn't the stuff that's graded. And which that was an awesome answer, by the way. But your response was, makes me wonder why we use grades at all. And then in parentheses, you said, okay. I wondered this a long time before this tweet. I just want to say, we've already touched on all the reasons why you wondered that. It was just, I thought I wanted.
Yep. It was very succinct. Why do it? Doesn't make sense.
All right. So this was a good live.
I think we've been talking for like 45 minutes.
Yeah, we've been for a while. So why don't we let's wrap it up with some. Do either of you have a final thought at all? And we've done a lot of thoughts. So I don't know. Hold on,
Fuck the system.
Hold on. Hey, here we go. Hold on. We just got a big comment. This was from, Rachel. Actually, I graduated with Rachel. So let's see what she says. I am forced in kindergarten to give letter grades or points weekly for a standards-based kindergarten report card. It makes absolutely no sense, and terrible to have to give poor low babies D's and F's when it's not necessarily their fault that they don't have a developmental skill yet. Any thoughts on that? That's rough. We're all just like heartbroken right now for you, Rachel.
You gotta just keep tracking. I mean, like, you being able to assign purposeful grades and then continuously pushing your district on asking them that purpose. You just keep trekking. You're doing good stuff in your classroom, I'm sure. So I
do know what district she's in, and they are in a tough spot right now. And they don't have they have like zero autonomy at the building or classroom level. So just keep, like Rae said, keep trekking, and we're gonna get there eventually. We're gonna come take over.
Well, and that was gonna be my final thought. Like, to all the teachers out there that have listened to us babble and all the feedback you've gotten from Twitter, just challenge yourself to really evaluate your grading. Are you assigning purposeful lessons or purposeful assignments, purposeful grades? Because as Tiffany suggested earlier in our chat, there's ways that you can change your practice to better fit your students. So you just need to decide what that may look like for you, and then challenge yourself to really, give yourself permission to do something about it.
And bounce ideas off of us. Like, we love talking about this stuff. It's been 45 minutes. So, seriously, just reach out to us. And if you have an idea or a challenge that you think it can't work because of X, Y, or Z, the worst we can do is say, I don't know what to tell you. But the best we could do is help you find a solution. So reach out.
Yes. And Rachel, I don't know if you're in the group or not, but you should be. If you're not, that's my fault for being a bad friend. I'm literally just going to put that is both Tiffany and Rae's email addresses right there. So if you want to connect with them and say like, hey, here's what I have to do. Here's what they're restricting me to. I'm telling you, these two will brainstorm with you until they're blue in the face. That's not is that the right phrase? I don't know. Whatever. Until they're grid method green in the face.
Yes.
So utilize it, do it. That's what we do. So I think that's a good note to end on. And we will see you all next week for Twitter chat prior. Well, we'll come live here before the chat. And Twitter chats, our mastery chat every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. If you're like Rae and just a little bit slower than everyone else, it's 7.
Central time.
Or if you're way on the West Coast, I don't even know what it's like 11 in the morning or something.
Jeff is special today.
It's been a long, and I've had to really think today, and I don't like to think. So it's just my brain's just mush. No, every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. We will see you guys here next week. I'm losing my voice because we talked too long. So thank you. We'll see you.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.